Welcome to New York One's special report of Mayor Eric Adams dropping his re-election bid. In a nearly 9-minute video announcement from the stairs inside Gracie Mansion, the mayor reflected on his time in office and touted some of his achievements. Here's part of what he had to say.
Only in America can a story like this be told. When I was elected to serve as your mayor, I said these words: "This campaign was never about me. It was about the people of this city, from every neighborhood and background, who had been left behind and believed they would never catch up. This campaign was for the underserved, the marginalized, the abandoned, and betrayed by government. Since then, it has been my honor to be your mayor, and I'm proud to say that we took that victory 4 years ago and turned it into action."
Adams also said that he does not think he could continue his re-election campaign. He blamed media speculation and the Campaign Finance Board's decision to deny him public matching funds for affecting his ability to raise money in the race. The mayor's decision to drop out means he will be the first New York City mayor to serve just one term since David Dinkins, who was the city's first black mayor. This now means that it is officially a 3-person contest. Democratic nominee for mayor Zohran Mamdani, former Governor Andrew Cuomo, and Republican nominee Curtis Sliwa will now face off in November. I'm joined now by our team for some coverage. Our Bernadette Hogan and Dan Rivoli are here in the studio. Our Kelly Mena is outside Gracie Mansion, and our Ayanna Harry is standing by for some analysis as well. Let's go first to Bernadette. What did you make of the mayor's statement?
You know, the mayor, first of all, he blames other people and other groups for his fall from grace, so to speak. He came into power in 2021. He stitched together a coalition and was able to best the field. He was dealing with a post-COVID world, trying to fix the economy, municipal workers, their confidence in government. And, he promised to solve crime. And, we have seen better crime numbers over the past couple of years. If you compare it to pre-COVID, it's a bit of a different story. But, the mayor says that he was crippled because of the Campaign Finance Board. Public matching dollars were not flowing into his account. But he still was able to raise a ton of money throughout the course of the past couple of months and years. I mean, less over the past couple of months. But, the mayor was indicted under federal indictment for bribery charges. Yes, it was dropped. But, we have seen time and time again reports that the mayor was trying to save his future by allegedly dealing with the Trump administration, and in a Democratic city, predominantly Democratic city, that doesn't fly with New Yorkers.
Okay, let's go to our Kelly Mena. She joins us from outside Gracie Mansion. Kelly, your thoughts?
Errol, I think that this day, for me at least, was something that I definitely expected. It was just a matter of timing. Obviously, in the mayor's thinking, he's thinking early voting is coming up in a couple of weeks. If you're going to drop out of a race and potentially help somebody else or make an impact, you have to do it with enough time to, not necessarily be a spoiler candidate, give somebody else a chance at it. I think that the writing was on the wall for the mayor for many weeks now, as many of us had been reporting about possible job opportunities for the mayor in maybe a federal government position or maybe in the private sector, and that it was just a matter of days before the mayor was going to drop out. It was also interesting to see that he didn't endorse anybody, not a surprise at all for the mayor, because he's a very proud man, but kind of hinting at who he thinks should be the person that New Yorkers should vote for. Said that you shouldn't go for somebody that has made you promises, which is something said on the campaign about Zohran Mamdani, but somebody who has delivered, and that subtly kind of hinting at maybe that's Andrew Cuomo signaling who he thinks should be his successor. It was interesting to hear all of the accomplishments he's mentioned that he's had at his administration. I think those have been, not at the forefront as he had hoped because of all the other things surrounding his administration, the scandals, the resignations, the questions about ethics and morals around him, who he's chosen to bring into City Hall, and of course that now dismissed federal indictment that just dogged him and were at the top in the forefront for many people and many voters going into this November general election, Errol.
All right, thanks very much, Kelly. Let's get our Ayanna Harry in now for some more thoughts. What was your reaction to this video?
Errol, three main questions have come up for me in the hours since this video came out. One is, what will happen to that approximately 9% or so, 7 to 9% of support that Mayor Eric Adams has in this race? Will those voters choose to support Curtis Sliwa, Andrew Cuomo, or perhaps even Zohran Mamdani? I'm also wondering what will happen to the $3.5 million currently sitting in the mayor's campaign bank account. Will he save that money for a potential run in the future? Or could he attempt to potentially try and use that money to pay some of his legal bills? And I'm also wondering how the mayor will lead from City Hall over these next few months. Now that he knows he doesn't have to worry about running for reelection, he will not be back for another term. Could we see the mayor make some bold moves that could potentially be considered unpopular, but maybe he's not afraid to make them anymore because he doesn't have to worry about getting the vote for another 4 years?
Very interesting. Our Dan Rivley is here, and Dan, it's kind of telling that the mayor, he mentioned a lot of different factors that were beyond his control, never mentioned the legal problems that really seemed, I guess in hindsight, to have been critical in making it hard for him to get reelected.
Yeah, he kind of hinted at it, but I think that was really what led to today, is that he could never shake the idea that he basically sold out to the Trump administration. Whether he thinks it's fair or not is so immaterial, because the polls were low because voters felt he had broken a trust with them. And, you know, that video he put out today for nearly 9 minutes would have made a good reelection pitch if he didn't use it to say, I'm not running for reelection. He did have a philosophy of government and policy agenda and some achievements he could bring to a campaign, but he said he just couldn't get his message out. I think with or without money, he couldn't get his message out. He was really, in the last days of this campaign, just detailing the indignities he had suffered, just a lot of complaining whenever he was up in front of reporters. I'm being sabotaged. There's forces working against me. Biden didn't like me because I spoke about immigration. And it was all these forces. And we would, I would ask him, Mr. Mayor, why don't you try running, your achievement? Do you want us to air on television that you're just complaining? And he turned to me and he said, I'm not complaining, I'm campaigning. Yet he just could not stop stepping on his own message to just recount how he was so wrong. And I think at some point voters are just tuning that out and they're turning around to another candidate. And for Adams, he just keeps talking like he's old news.
In advance of what tomorrow will be literally Monday morning quarterbacking,
Right.
One of the things that the mayor was urged to do when he first came in is make a list of what your agenda is, so that we'll all be able to sort of go back to it and check the list and say, did you do these things?
Right.
He has a list of accomplishments, but we kind of have to piece it together. There was phonics for education,
Right.
and there was the sanitation plan, and then there's whatever he was doing with public safety, but we never really got it in a coherent package from the mayor.
Right, partially because the way that the mayor ran City Hall was he kind of ping-ponged from event to idea, and the follow-through was the real question. There were several stories that we've covered over the last 3.5 years where the question was, how did that continue on, or how did it end? And maybe some of these more successful programs were able to be achieved through assistance with the city council, which we know are few and far between because City Hall had a poor relationship with the other side. But if you look at City of Yes, for example, which was championed by one of his now departed deputy mayors, City of Yes is a huge accomplishment when it comes to zoning and the future of building more housing in New York City. And that's also made part by state dollars. Same thing goes with mental health, discovery reform, state bail laws, all of those criminal justice policies that the mayor can point to as maybe partially his achievement, but also because he was lucky that the governor herself really prioritized that too. So the mayor also ran quite a bit on luck over the last 3.5 years.
Okay, thank you all for that analysis. Before we head to break, Governor Hochul weighed in earlier today saying, for the last 4 years, I've been proud to work with Mayor Adams to make New York City safer, stronger, and more affordable. I have been grateful for his partnership. He leaves New York City better than he inherited it, and that will always be central to his legacy as mayor. Earlier today, I spoke exclusively to the Democratic nominee for mayor, Zohran Mamdani. Here's our conversation. Joining me now is Zohran Mamdani. He's the Democratic nominee for mayor, and he's joining us live from Chelsea. He's in the neighborhood. He should have come by here. Thanks for joining me. What is your reaction to today's news?
You know, Donald Trump and his billionaire donors can determine the actions of Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo, but they can't dictate the results of this election. And what we see today is an illustration of what so many New Yorkers are tired of. They are tired of the politics of backroom deals. They are tired of a politics that has delivered them the most expensive city in the United States of America. And in many ways, it doesn't change the focus of this campaign, which is on working class New Yorkers and ensuring they can afford the city they call home.
I mean, isn't the analysis, at least on one level, that Zohran Mamdani and Andrew Cuomo were beating Eric Adams like a drum? He was stuck in single digits, and he decided there was no path to victory, so he dropped out. He doesn't necessarily need a billionaire to tell him that, right?
Well, look, he might not be in this race, but his record is Andrew Cuomo's agenda. It's an agenda that will continue on the legacy that the Adams administration delivered of raising the rent on millions of New Yorkers, of cutting funding for their child care, for their schools, for their libraries, on slowing down the already slowest buses in the country. That is the agenda that Andrew Cuomo is running on to continue.
So when the mayor released his video, have you spoken to him? Are you thinking about reaching out to him?
I haven't spoken to the mayor today. I haven't spoken to the mayor since we saw each other at the Dominican Day Parade.
Oh, I see. Okay. Are you interested in talking with him? You know, I mean, at a minimum, if things go your way, you're going to have a transition conversation. But I'm wondering, even prior to that, if there's anything you might want to talk about with him.
You know, if Eric Adams wants to speak a little bit more about Andrew Cuomo being a liar and a snake, as he put it a few weeks ago, I'd be happy to have that conversation with him, and happy to talk to him about anything that could benefit New Yorkers.
Okay, so you've clearly moved on to what is now your principal opponent. Look, the analysis from the pundits out there is going to be that Andrew Cuomo is getting closer to the scenario that he wanted, which was a one-on-one race against you. Is that how you see this?
Look, I think Andrew Cuomo also wanted me to be his opponent in the Democratic primary, and we beat him by 13 points then. And I'm just as confident about winning this race on November 4th. And I think whether it's Andrew Cuomo, whether it's Curtis Sliwa, what New Yorkers want is a politics that actually speaks to the future of this city, to make this city one that's affordable. And they're not going to turn to a disgraced former governor to deliver that when he's been the architect of what has pushed so many New Yorkers out of these 5 boroughs.
I saw that you had something for your campaign followers just in the last few days, asking them to submit designs for some kind of a button. How did that work out, and what was that all about?
Yes. You know, one of the things that I and many New Yorkers enjoy about going to vote are the stickers that you have to show your civic pride. And we thought it was time for a refresh for the I Registered to Vote sticker. And so we received hundreds of submissions from New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, and we put it to a vote, and we're going to be announcing very soon which one has won, because it's going to be a key part of how we win this election, is ensuring that the electorate reflects more of the city, to register thousands of new voters just in the way that we did in the primary, and show that each and every New Yorker's concerns will be reflected in this race and in the electorate of that same race.
Well, describe the profile of these new voters. Who are these folks that you're trying to bring into the process?
You know, it ranges, Errol. I'll tell you, by and large, these are younger voters. What we saw in the primary is that we made the 3 highest performing age group demographics all under the age of 35, something that had never been seen in New York City politics before. But we also know that there are voters, there are New Yorkers who've been here for decades who are just now registering to vote. One of my good friends, Salman, he was telling me about how his 90-year-old grandfather is now for the first time looking to register to vote. You know, the other day I was at Little Flower and Sammy's Kebab House, 2 incredible coffee shops and restaurants here in Astoria. And the owner, Sammy himself, is registering to vote. We can see this time and time again with so many people who just have never seen themselves or seen their concerns reflected in the politics of their city.
Before I let you go, there's a long piece in the Wall Street Journal this weekend that tries to put not just your candidacy, but others like it, in a broader context, talking about the Occupy generation. People who came of age as the financial crisis was devastating people's mortgages and their personal family finances in 2008, all the way up through the current affordability crisis. Is that more or less right? Does that sound like your experience and the experience of the people who have brought you this far?
You know, I haven't read the article as yet, but what I would say is that for many New Yorkers, their experience of politics has been one of despair and disappointment. And I don't begrudge so many who look at politics as something to be avoided as opposed to something to be engaged with. And it's because of these exact kind of moments that you've mentioned, Errol, and because that for so many, whenever that engagement has come, it's come at the expense of themselves and at their families. And so what we're trying to do here is not just to run against the other candidates looking to become the next mayor of the city, but also to run with a message that politics can be different. It must be different. And in order for it to be so, we actually have to reflect the concerns of working New Yorkers who are being pushed out of this city. And that's why when we talk about freezing the rent for rent-stabilized tenants, when we talk about making the slowest buses in America fast and free, or delivering universal child care, these aren't ideas we came up with consultants. These are ideas that we came up with listening to New Yorkers and why they were falling out of love with the city that they once called home.
Okay, we're going to leave it there for now. Was your campaign manager high-fiving you and everybody else when the news came out today?
No, I can tell you it was news that dropped right as we were doing what we always focus on, which is actually speaking to working New Yorkers and fighting for their interests.
Okay, we'll see you out there. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to bring in our Dan Rivoli and Bernadette Hogan with some more analysis. What did you make of that?
Well, you know, Mamdani is trying to take the high road, trying to say that, listen, we're going to continue to focus on affordability and our message and keep reaching out to voters. It's interesting that he says that he really has no interest in talking to Mayor Eric Adams, and they have not spoken. And, you know, Mamdani, again, he is able to get by, you know, responding to news, whether it's coming out of the Trump administration, the state level, the city end, and continue to move forward so that he could say, listen, we're attracting a bunch of people to our campaign, and it kind of leaves the policy end a little bit more murky. But then one could also argue, we don't know yet until or if he ends up becoming mayor and what his time in office will look like, because that will just unleash a whole different host of pressures.
Normally you would think that 5, 6, 8% of the vote was a prize worth having, worth making a phone call, maybe worth strategizing around. Mamdani doesn't sound like he's interested in much of whatever it is Eric Adams can bring to the table.
Not at all. And almost kind of being a little condescending towards Mayor Adams. Say, oh, well, if we want to talk about you trashing Andrew Cuomo, yeah, let's have a talk about that. And not embrace anything from Eric Adams that voters do like, whether or not they like Eric Adams himself or feel he's lost the trust to be mayor for another 4 years. And you mentioned the generational change where a lot of his young supporters are not in tune to some of the political structures that helped Mayor Adams become mayor, whether that's local community organizations, tenant associations, things like that. You know, for Mamdani, a lot of his supporters, he's relentlessly on message about affordability and for working class New Yorkers. A lot of his supporters are people who like policies for the working class, but are not working class themselves. That is, people without college degrees who work union jobs, for example. They make a good living. They're making six figures, and if they're not making six figures, they have advanced degrees. So he is still staying on message. I think you saw with Andrew Cuomo how he responded to this. Obviously, he likes having Mayor Adams drop out. That's what he always wanted, to really make this as close to a one-on-one race in the voters' minds as he can make it. And he is going to need some of that more, blue-collar union workforce who don't have college degrees to get into Cuomo's camp and leave, the advanced degrees, people holding them to Mamdani's camp.
Well, this is day one of the three-man race. It may change as we get closer to Election Day. We'll be back with more analysis and what this all means for Andrew Cuomo after this short break. Stay with us. Andrew Cuomo, who is running as an independent in the general election, also weighed in on the news with a statement saying, "The choice Mayor Adams made today was not an easy one, but I believe he is sincere in putting the well-being of New York City ahead of personal ambition. We face destructive extremist forces that would devastate our city through incompetence or ignorance, but it is not too late to stop them. Mayor Adams has much to be proud of in his accomplishments. Only in New York can a child raised in a tenement in Bushwick who once worked as a squeegee boy and a mailroom clerk rise to become mayor. Whatever differences we may have, Eric Adams' story is undeniably one of resilience, a testament to the spirit of this city." I want to bring in our Ayanna Harry, who's been covering the Cuomo campaign, for some more analysis. Ayanna, what did you make of that statement?
It seems that Andrew Cuomo is stopping short of criticizing Mayor Eric Adams, despite the pretty harsh language we've heard from Mayor Adams directed towards Andrew Cuomo in recent weeks. Of course, the mayor called Andrew Cuomo a liar and a snake. But in this statement, we see the former governor, Andrew Cuomo, praising Mayor Eric Adams in his life story, in making it from those humble beginnings to becoming mayor of New York City. And of course, the large question that is unanswered at this moment right now is, will we ultimately see a Mayor Adams endorsement of Andrew Cuomo? In recent days, Andrew Cuomo has been out and about. He's been campaigning. He has been soft in his tone in terms of criticism, or softer in terms of his criticism of Mayor Eric Adams. And we are beginning to see some of the mayor's allies, including Frank Carone, now begin to throw their support towards Andrew Cuomo. So we will be waiting to see if we do get that answer to that question, whether or not the mayor might endorse Andrew Cuomo.
And when it comes to what Andrew Cuomo is trying to do, it seems clearly he wants to inherit or appeal to some of the base of people who, however small it may be, are still with Eric Adams.
Absolutely. Andrew Cuomo right now has a numbers problem. I was just taking a look at the numbers from the Emerson College poll earlier this month, Errol, and found Zohran Mamdani had 43% support. Andrew Cuomo, who was in second, only had 28% support. So, in looking at the numbers, the analysis from Emerson College, it would take all of the mayor's supporters, his 7%, plus the 9% of undecided voters. All of that support would have to go to Andrew Cuomo in order for him to beat Zohran Mamdani, at least at that snap point in time. So look, Andrew Cuomo is going to need to find a way to gather more support, to get more voters on his side. And so one way that he could potentially do that is by appealing to the mayor's supporters. There was also a head-to-head matchup that Emerson College took a look at, and they found that, Mamdani would have 47%. Andrew Cuomo still would not be able to win if no one else was in the race. Here's also part of the reality. Eric Adams, he is suspending his campaign, but his name is still going to be on the ballot. It's too late for it to have it removed. So there is still likely going to be a few New Yorkers who go into the ballot box. They say, oh, Eric Adams, perhaps they haven't been watching this New York One special. They don't know that he suspended his reelection campaign. The mayor could still get some votes. So it seems like if Andrew Cuomo does want to get to that victory in November, he will need support from Adams voters, but it's unclear if he'll be able to get all of that support, which it seems like he might need at this point.
One of the wild cards that's out there that we've already seen can affect this race is the President Trump. That whatever he says, and he can say anything at any given moment or spout off on social media, he could actually make life a little bit more difficult for some or all of the candidates that are still in the race.
Absolutely. We saw Mayor Eric Adams really suffer in the polls, in part because voters throughout New York City felt he was too closely aligned with President Donald Trump. But there has been reporting out of Washington that President Trump is now perhaps looking to help support in ways Andrew Cuomo and his bid for City Hall, believing Andrew Cuomo is the person best positioned to potentially beat Zohran Mamdani. So if New Yorkers begin to feel like Andrew Cuomo is closely aligned or tied to President Donald Trump, or that President Trump is rooting for Andrew Cuomo to win, that could certainly backfire, because we know President Donald Trump, his policies are deeply unpopular in the city right now. So it's going to be, and this is all in part out of Andrew Cuomo's control. We never know when the president may be asked a question in Washington, D.C. about the race for mayor, and whatever the president says, whether it's positive or negative about Andrew Cuomo, it can certainly impact the Cuomo campaign.
As a general matter, when you've talked with the strategists who are working with Andrew Cuomo, has it occurred to them that making this race about Zohran Mamdani maybe gives him an extra boost? Whenever it's about the new versus the old, American voters in general, New York voters in particular, tend to be at least a little bit intrigued by the prospect of something new.
The strategy that the Cuomo campaign has tried to get forth, or the message they've been trying to get out to New York City voters, is that Zohran Mamdani and his policies and his platform, it may be alluring, but ultimately he doesn't have the experience to run New York City. And ultimately, they're trying to argue that his platform just simply would not work. So Zohran Mamdani says freeze the rent. Andrew Cuomo is saying, what about landlords? Zohran Mamdani has in the past been critical of the NYPD, although he's walked back some of those comments. Andrew Cuomo is saying, Not only do I support the NYPD, they are the key to public safety, and I want to hire 5,000 more officers. So their strategy is to call out Zohran Mamdani and to try and point out to voters the ways in which they believe his platform simply will not work for the city.
Okay, thanks very much, Ayanna. Before we head to break, State Attorney General Letitia James said the following today. I'm grateful to Eric Adams for his service to our city. As the next mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani will work every day to build an affordable, safe city that New Yorkers will be proud to call home. Get out and vote on Election Day, New York. Now I'm joined by the Republican mayoral nominee. Curtis Sliwa is joining us from the restaurant Panino Rustico in Bay Ridge. Good to see you.
Oh, great. I was working the 3rd Avenue Festival in Bay Ridge all day, Errol. What a great day it was, especially when they announced it's now a 3-person race. Eric Adams, one and done.
That's got to be especially satisfying to you because you were his opponent 4 years ago. He came out on top. This time it looks like the positions are reversed. What changed?
Well, it's actually because I predicted all of this. I said that Eric Adams, if you elect him, we would have chaos and corruption, and we had so much of that. And we lost so many good federal prosecutors. Errol, they were Republicans, conservatives, who were prosecuting him, and then Trump's Department of Justice dismissed the charges. And notice the drama, the novellas that have taken place. This gives us now, with 37 days and 37 nights left, an opportunity to focus on the issues of the campaign and not who's going to drop out. Because we all knew that Eric Adams was waiting for the price to be right. It was Monty Hall, let's make a deal. It was all for the money. And once he got his price, he was out. Thank God, good riddance. Let's get back to the race.
When's the last time you spoke with the mayor, Curtis?
Oh, it's been a long, long time since we were on that debate stage in 2021. Remember, dealing with Curtis Sliwa and Eric Adams was dealing like with 2 scorpions in a brandy glass. I did not like this guy. I knew he was corrupt. I knew the guy who was fundraising for him, Frank Carone, who's going back and forth. This is like a Mario Brothers video game now. Frank Carone, he goes to Trump. He goes to Cuomo. He goes to Adams. Wherever the money is, follow the money. It's Frank Carone. Now he's raising money for a PAC for Andrew Cuomo. Hey, do me a favor. Frank Carone, stay away from me, huh?
Tell me about your path to victory. You're running against essentially 2 Democrats.
Well, you have Zohran Mamdani, and I saw you up at Columbia University. Zohran Mamdani is not handling well the issue of public safety and giving sort of nice, concise answers. What are you going to do about the policing, quality of life? You know, how are you going to hire cops? How are you going to allocate them? He's finding it very difficult because it clashes with his DSA view. And then, of course, with Andrew Cuomo, he's the author of No Cash Bail. He's the one who raised the age. He doesn't have a background in which you can say is law and order. Whereas I think if everybody acknowledges one thing about Curtis Sliwa, I'm the law and order candidate. I want to hire 7,000 cops. I want to get police officers back on the subway trains, the moving subway trains patrolling, put back the homeless outreach unit that used to be part of the police department that de Blasio did away with when he took $1 billion out of the budget. And I want cops walking a beat to be a visual deterrent, which they're not doing now. If we can just accomplish some of those things, people will feel that our city is no longer sort of epitomized as a city where we lock up toothpaste and we don't lock up criminals.
What do you make of the argument, which I think is supported by some of the polling data, Curtis, that while crime and public safety are important to New Yorkers, the number one issue is affordability? What do you have to say? What do you think of that? And what's your plan to address that issue?
Oh, there's no doubt affordability, the cost of living. But I'm the only candidate who's saying we've got to slash the taxes. We got to slash income tax. We got to slash property tax, the corporate tax rate, because everybody's fleeing because it costs too much to live here. And then all these fees and fines that get attached, speed cameras, red light cameras, the cost of electricity, because Cuomo took Indian Point offline without a replacement, is skyrocketing. They've raised the water rates, the sewage rates. So the cost of living is prohibitive. because whether you look at the private sector or you look at the public sector, everything is being raised. And then when I look at the millennials, my wife Nancy, who was featured in that first commercial we did, she tells me, hey, look, I'm getting crushed by student loans. If I wasn't living with you in marriage, I'd probably still be sharing an apartment with 3 other people like I did in a dormitory when I was going to law school. So I understand all of that. But if you don't cut the cost of government and you don't cut taxes, you're going to continue to have an increase in expenses that are going to have to be absorbed by the people who can pay the taxes, because the rich, let's face it, they know how to shield. All these billionaires who are trying to fix this race, they know how to shield their money. It's the blue-collar working class that get clipped. And the poor and the indigent, they really can't pay taxes because they need to exist off what we can provide for them until they can get back on track. So I'm the candidate of the blue-collar working class, which are the majority of the population, which Cuomo does not represent and Zohran Mamdani does not represent. Look, you got Zohran Mamdani. He's Bill de Blasio on steroids. You got Andrew Cuomo, who is Zohran Mamdani light.
When you talk about reducing the cost of government by slashing taxes, of course, the number one expense is headcount. What agencies in particular have you identified where you think that maybe we could either find some efficiencies or just cut the agencies back?
Without a doubt, the biggest is the Department of Education, $41 billion out of a bloated budget of $118. $118 billion. Now, average cost per student, $42,000. We look at fourth graders, 2/3 cannot read, write, or do arithmetic at grade level. We have 100,000 less students. 1/3 of them are truants each and every day. 200 schools with 200 or less students. Michael Moglu, who's head of the UFT, determines that they must stay open. I would conflate them. So there are so many ways to cut that budget. And then when you go to the Tweed Courthouse, home of Tammany Hall, perfect place for the bureaucracy of the Department of Education. You got 13 deputy chancellors, 50 department heads. I talk to principals all the time at the elementary, junior high school level who hire their staffs. I said, do you know who these people are? Barely. Did they offer you any help? No. Teachers even have to reach into their pockets now and continue to buy basic supplies for the children and young adults in their classrooms. With a $41 billion budget that keeps growing? No, there's $10 billion that we can cut from that budget alone. And I know exactly who will do it. Robert Holden, who's the head of Democrats for Sliwa, was a teacher for 40 years. He knows exactly what to focus on, what to cut that will not hurt the children and young adults in the classroom, nor the teachers.
Would Mr. Holden be your choice as chancellor?
Well, I wish he would. I mean, I think he's the most knowledgeable that I've run across. I've run across many people in the field of education. But I think the most important thing, Errol, unlike Adams, de Blasio, and some of the previous mayors, I'm not omnipotent. I don't declare to know everything. We have a lot of good men and women out there, Democrats and Republicans and independents, who know their fields of expertise. One thing I'm going to do, Errol, you know politics. 97% of the work is done by staff. I don't care if they're Republicans or Democrats. We're going to elevate these civil servants who have great ideas, great plans, but they either get hijacked by the elected officials that they do the heavy lifting for, who spend most of their time dialing for dollars. We have so many great civil servants. They've never been given their opportunity to shine, either with Rudy and Bloomberg, the Republicans, de Blasio or Adams, the Democrats. I'm going to change how our focus of government is, because we do have a lot of people who know how to run government, and I'm going to be listening to them. Naturally, I sign off. But these are people with tremendous expertise who love this city. I know because I've had many conversations with them.
Okay. All right. We will see you out on the campaign trail. Thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Oh, and tell Errol Lewis, tell all those billionaires, stay away from me. I'm not dropping out. 37 days, 37 nights. I trust the people. Let them make the decision of who the next mayor is. Oofa to the billionaires and the professional political class.
Okay. All the billionaires watching, do not call that man. Let me bring in our Dan Rivoli, who's with me in the studio for some analysis. What did you make of that?
Well, we know Curtis Sliwa has the gift of gab. He's a broadcast professional, but your question about him, what would you cut? You know, and he has such an alacrity with the details on the Department of Education, for instance, and it's also a different view of what government should do that you're not seeing from the other Democrats. And that analysis from Sliwa, that it's two Democrats running against a Republican, he's right on that in terms of what policies they're proposing. You know, with Mamdani has been talking about universal child care, and it's a lot of it is subsidizing the demand that's out there. And you hear someone like Sliwa, while he didn't talk explicitly about childcare, his view of the government is not to subsidize demand, but kind of get rid of the regulations and lower the taxes. So on an issue like childcare, if you were to focus that view of government on that issue, you might have more childcare centers opening, more people can make use of it, have more choice, and maybe that would bring down the price. So it's just a different view of government.
Okay, thanks very much. Welcome back to New York One's special report on Mayor Adams dropping his re-election bid. For weeks, the mayor has been insisting that he would stay in the race, saying that he's the only candidate who can stop Democratic nominee for mayor Zohran Mamdani. The mayor has taken jabs at Andrew Cuomo, calling him a snake and a liar, and even the Republican candidate, Curtis Sliwa, he called him a clown. But what led to the mayor's decision to drop out of this four-way race nearly 5 weeks out? Was it a result of his low polling numbers? Well, the answer seems to be yes. Here's a look at where he was standing. Siena University had him at 9% support. Quinnipiac had him at 12%. Emerson had him at 7%. And Marist had him at 9%. In all those cases, Bernadette Hogan, who's here for some analysis, in all of these cases, Bernadette, he was in 4th place.
Right. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why he ended up dropping out of the Democratic primary and saying he would run as an independent. So if we look at the Marist University poll, which Errol, the questions involved were taken between September 8th and September 11th. So a couple weeks ago, but still, you know, might not have affected what we're seeing today. You have Zohran Mamdani leading with 45% compared to Andrew Cuomo at 24%, Curtis Sliwa, the Republican, at 17%, and Eric Adams rounding it out with 9%. So some of the crosstabs, you know, Mamdani receives a majority support, which would be 58%, according to Marist University, among Democrats likely to vote, while Cuomo would have only received 23% from the group. And this is when Adams is, of course, still as part of the contest, four-way. But there is a question that Marist asked, which if Adams were to drop out of the contest, Mamdani would receive 46% of likely voters' support compared to 30% for Cuomo and 18% for Sliwa. So the question is, how much will Eric Adams dropping out of the race really affect the other candidates?
Well, that number seemed to suggest that most of them did not go to Mamdani. Is that
right? It looks like they go to Cuomo. Cuomo gets a bit of a boost, and Sliwa does as well if we looked at the numbers from before. But, you know, Andrew Cuomo has been urging all of the candidates, Eric Adams and Curtis Sliwa, to drop out so he can face Mamdani in a one-on-one race, because that also increases his support. But if you look at Marist's numbers on likely voters, again, Mamdani still is ahead of the pack. A couple other, you know, notable points here, Errol. Mamdani's positives are very high, and Andrew Cuomo's negatives are very high. So voters are viewing Mamdani with a different lens than they're viewing Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo was a 3-term governor. He had many negatives, and he resigned in disgrace. Whereas Zohran Mamdani, relatively new slate, it's one of his criticisms, but it could also be one of his benefits.
Okay, I'm glad we had a chance to look at these numbers. The mayor, of course, was doing his own internal polling, I'm sure.
Right.
And his numbers probably looked the same. That led to today's decision. Thanks so much. We've been receiving lawmaker reaction to this announcement all day, including from House Minority Leader Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, who has yet to endorse in the race for mayor. Earlier today, he said in a statement, "It is clear that meaningful progress has been made in several important areas during the term of Mayor Adams. Thank you for your service to our city. I will publicly weigh in with respect to the remaining candidates in the mayor's race well before the start of early voting." I asked the former chief of staff to Mayor Adams, Frank Carone, about his reaction to Adams suspending his campaign. Here's part of our exclusive conversation.
It was a very, encompassing, tough decision, particularly if you look at the statements you just read from House Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Attorney General Tisha James, Governor Hochul, and Governor Cuomo. You see experienced professional dignified leaders, giving a man who's given incredible service to the city of New York, turned around the city from the ravages of COVID, and it just objectively has done a great job. And then you see the two candidates remaining in the race, Curtis Sliwa and Mamdani, taking pot shots and snide remarks, and just shows you the unprofessionalism. And I think that distinction is what really stood out at me, and I hope the audience sees that as well. And it is that professionalism and objectivity is what we brought to this conversation. You know, the mayor has overcome incredible obstacles, and for whatever reason, the narrative and the message was not resonating at this particular moment, which was interesting because when I'm out and about with the mayor, which is often, we went to just recently last Friday, a art exhibit opening for beginner artists and startup artists, had to be over 200 diverse attendees. The mayor was greeted with such adoration, pleasantries, so much so that the kitchen staff stopped cooking and came out to say, "Great job, keep it up, we need you." And then I weigh that against the polling, and you realize that the polling narrative is important for, you know, the insiders and for the political class, but it was not indicative truly of where the mayor was. But with the campaign finance board making their decision to prohibit the mayor from having the necessary funds to campaign, because the messaging was not hitting the masses through vis-a-vis the polling that we would have liked, and the rest of the issues surrounding the mayor, he made a very courageous decision. I think history is going to judge him and the administration very, very well. This administration has so much to be proud of and has done such a great job. And I'm just happy to be part of it. A great privilege to me. And I thank the mayor for allowing me to do so. And, you know, let the mayor have his day and we'll go from here.
Joining us now to talk more about this, as well as Mayor Adams' lasting legacy, we've got some team coverage. Dan Rivoli and Bernadette Hogan are here with me in the studio. Kelly Mena is out in front of Gracie Mansion, and our Ayanna Harry is joining us as well. And Bernadette, what will you remember about the Adams administration? This, as they say, is the first draft of history.
Well, I think about crime because that is what the mayor ran on. He said that he was a former police officer and there was too much crime and disorder in New York City. You know, in the wake of the George Floyd protests, we obviously saw, I mean, we continue to see the repercussions of police interactions with those protesters. And the mayor, you know, he said that he would bring down the levels. If you look at the numbers, I mean, just in August, the NYPD commissioner and the mayor touted a decrease in shootings and transit crimes overall. But if you compare the figures, the year over year, the month over month, they are higher still compared to pre-COVID levels in 2019. And that's something to look out for because, you know, the mayor can tout a month over month improvement. But when you look at the pre-COVID world, it's just not true. And then we can also jump over to how the mayor, his first police commissioner, Keishant Sewell, who, you know, if you talk to sources, they say she was a real cop's cop. And she was pushed out, according to sources and, you know, reporting afterwards, because she had disagreements with some of the mayor's former associates and former top brass in the NYPD. She wanted to discipline Jeffrey Madry, one of the former top brass in the NYPD who had served with Mayor Adams, and instead she parted ways. Eddie Caban, the next police commissioner, he ended up also embroiled in a federal investigation, as was his brother, and that is still ongoing. So the mayor's confidence in controlling and bringing down crime, if you ask New Yorkers, they either say they still think that crime and disorder exists and the status quo has remained the same. But we'll see how, you know, the governor has helped a lot with the mayor as well, but we'll see how that continues to be looked at.
So many of these come with an asterisk next to them. Kelly Mena, I know the mayor in his video today and almost every other day talked about housing as something he wants to be remembered for, right?
Yeah, that's right, Errol, especially because he muscled through that massive legislation or package for housing called City of Yes for Housing Opportunity. His plan to really allow for housing to be built much easier and faster across all 5 boroughs. He adopted this idea that everybody has to do their fair share, no matter where you are, whether you're in a neighborhood in the Bronx or you're in Staten Island. You need to be part of the solution for affordability, funny enough, for bringing more housing, whether it's near a transit stop, near a subway stop, or it's a residential area where they can bring in some density. That was the goal of that package. He, along with the city council, were able to get that through in December, and that's going to be a big win for the mayor and a legacy builder, because it's going to lead to more housing across the city in the years to come, Errol.
Okay. Real quick, Dan, your take on the legacy of the mayor.
I think that Adams's 4 years at City Hall, it can be a cautionary tale, and it offers a lesson that I think Adams himself learned too late, that you have to empower and trust your smart and accomplished officials, and you have to have a low tolerance for people who may be loyal but are in it for themselves and bring embarrassment to your administration. And I think there are officials on both sides of that. You mentioned Keyshawn Sewell, his first police commissioner, who got good reviews by all accounts, getting pushed out because she was not empowered enough. And then you have officials in his administration who had to resign under clouds of investigations.
Absolutely. Ayanna, you get the last word.
I think about public education and the mayor's impact there. It's such an important area when you think there are 900,000 public school students in New York City. Eric Adams wanted to fundamentally change the way in which students in New York City learn how to read. So he had this NYC Reads program, which really focused more on phonic-based learning, and this was a massive effort. It took the retraining of teachers, but we are seeing some progress. Just this past spring, we learned that reading scores in New York City went up 7%. That's directly a result of NYC Reads and the mayor trying to change the way in which students are taught.
Okay. I personally will always remember the composting and the trash bins. Well, thank you all for joining me. Thank you for that analysis. That is going to do it for this special report on Mayor Adams dropping his re-election bid. But stay with New York One for continuing coverage. And as a quick programming note, I will be with Bobby Kuza and Courtney Gross tomorrow for a live crossover podcast event. That event is sold out, but we'll be streaming it live on YouTube. And as a reminder, Inside City Hall is streaming on the Spectrum News app as well on YouTube every night starting at 7. Thanks so much for joining us.